Pickups in Half-Life games often appear in unusual places.
Power 15%.
Most of the time, this is a simple way to reward exploration of the environment, which provides a whole bunch of benefits, like making the world feel bigger, breaking up the linearity of the game, and just generally making players feel good about their progress. Of course, this isn't unique to Half-Life. It's a staple of the FPS genre, going all the way back to Wolfenstein 3D, which took it from, well, most action games in general. However, the Half-Life series goes out of its way to explain all these hidden goodies, from elaborate side paths dropping players in locked rooms, to just putting a dead guy in there. I mean, you're crawling around these vents, who's to say he couldn't too? The thing is, though, there is one pickup in this series that really stands out. A battery placed in such a nonsensical spot that it requires a closer look. Does this warrant a whole video? No. But this is my show. You're gonna watch it and you're gonna fucking like it. The battery in question appears in Half-Life 2's Root Canal chapter at the end of Event. Now, we're going to go in depth and see if we can figure out why it's there, but first, we need to talk about Half-Life 2's batteries in general, starting with a history lesson. Not really a beta moment, but the intro's fun, so I'm playing it anyway.
Sorry, Doc.
Half-Life 1 didn't give much explanation for how the armor system actually works. I fail to see how adding power to a suit will make it more resistant to bullets. From what little research I've done on the topic, that isn't really possible. It's one of those things Valve did for gameplay because that's more important than patching up any minor inconsistencies. I mean, they don't make games so assholes like me can pick them apart a few decades down the line. They make them for normal people to play and enjoy and use Steam for all of their gaming needs. It made enough sense for there to be power sources strewn around the facility, maybe a little odd to put dedicated HEV charging units in the warehouses, but again, gameplay focus. Fortunately, for the sequel, Half-Life 2 squashed any doubts with this little line.
I've modified your suit to draw power from Combine energy outlets, which are plentiful wherever they patrol.
It's a pretty good answer for a question nobody asked, and it fits wonderfully into the story. While this grand force of alien evil has been exploiting the infrastructure and technology of Earth, the Resistance in turn has found ways to exploit theirs, gaining the upper hand. This means that pretty much every pickup laying around in the game has a reason to be there. You follow rebel paths, or whatever's left of them for the majority of the game, and Combine outposts are always stocked up. It's this consistency and believability that makes it all the more confusing when you come across something in a weird place, like shotgun shells on a rooftop or, well, this battery. So let's take a closer look at Root Canal. During the chapter, Gordon's on the run from the Combine. This is their territory. The Citadel looms over every map, and they're sending a lot of incompetent cops to track you down. Once the game is sure you know how to aim, they start throwing manhacks at you as well. These things are straight up ridiculous, but we're gonna have to look past that for today.
It's just a flying circular saw, isn't it? This isn't what I thought at all. This is redneck technology.
One area in the chapter has players fall through a vent and land in this awful hellscape. Some of them were already there, presumably buzzing around chasing rats or whatever, but others bust open a vent on the other side of the room to get to Gordon. Half-Life 2 does this a lot. Gone are the days of random teleportation. You have zombies laying on the ground, cops jumping down at you, and manhacks blasting through pretty much anywhere they can fit. The thing is, though, you can almost never go through one of these enemy spawn points. I mean, that wouldn't make sense. These spots only exist to have enemies come out of them. Now, this room is kind of complicated from a gameplay perspective, even after all the... You have to go up, turn on a valve, come back through, go underneath, break some boards, then do a bit of platforming on physics objects. Or if you're not a total square, you can do this sick backward sprint jump off the ladder. So if instead of doing all that, by purposely ignoring the correct way as indicated by bright lights, players decided to go up the ladder to this manhack vent, shine the flashlight in it, jump up and down to spot a battery at the end, spend a minute trying to jump up here, go back down, tilt a barrel on its side, carry it back up the ladder, carefully balance it on the pipe, climb up and crawl slowly through the vent to reach the battery, now that would be an extremely small subset of players. There's no lambda symbol to mark a supply cache, nowhere else to go from here, and literally nothing but this damn battery. From a gameplay perspective, it has no merit. It's most likely some kind of mistake or weird Easter egg. To get as much information as possible, I decided to go one step further and downloaded the map source files for the game to check and hammer. Anyone who's tried using this thing for any extended period of time will tell you that it's an absolute nightmare. I had two reasons for doing this. First, I was wondering if the battery wasn't actually supposed to be there, and instead came from a scanner who just always dies shortly after loading in. Nope, the battery is in fact sitting here in the editor. The other thing I wanted to see is a name. You can name entities in the engine, mostly to pair them with other ones for grouping, scripted scenes, and it generally just makes this damn thing less of a headache. Sometimes the names have a bit of personality, like Manhack Matt over here. Unfortunately, this battery has no name, so yeah, that's a bust. The only information this reveals is why the vent goes up and curves around, to allow the developers to stuff more manhacks in here and have them fly out at different times. Between that and the part where the vent gives way to a poorly placed concrete texture, it has all the signs of somewhere the player wasn't meant to go. But it's in the game, it's canon, so let's look at some theories. First off, who put this here? Well, it wasn't the Combine. They might have had a bigger presence in the sewers in the beta, but there isn't exactly a reason for them to be tossing batteries in vents. That leaves us with the rebels, and, well, random animals, but that's just boring. See, this area is along the underground railroad that citizens take to get out of the city, and given the fact that Gordon has to solve some bullshit puzzle to proceed naturally, I think it's quite possible that this vent might have been part of the intended route. It's hard to tell what the lore-based, real way through the railroad is supposed to be, because it's in the process of being destroyed by the Combine. There are areas made weird for gameplay reasons. You can't tell what destruction or rebuilt infrastructure is from before or after Combine rule, and there are spots like this that are bare as all hell because Valve had to finish this thing up for the Christmas season. The problem with this theory is that the railroad route goes way off the deep end before this point. Specifically these extended swimming sections, the spots where you have to break boards to get through, and all the intact vent grates in the way before this point, as well as the one on the battery vent itself. I'm not saying this disproves the railroad route theory. Wow, try saying that 3 times fast. Railroad route theory, railroad route theory, railroad route... Fuck. Okay, let's just move on. The next possibility involves a familiar face, Dr. Kleiner. Before an incident involving a certain cat, we know Kleiner tested the technology on inanimate objects and plants, using this small-scale teleporter here. Perhaps one of these early tests involved teleporting a piece of complicated technology to see if it still functioned afterward, and the machine broke down. We know that sending things across random points in space is possible in this universe when a teleporter malfunctions, so it isn't that big of a stretch, as long as you ignore the fact that we have no evidence whatsoever. Not like that's much of a problem on this show. My final theory delves into the single most mysterious aspect of the Half-Life series, the G-Man. We don't know his motives, what exactly he does, or, well, much of anything about him. However, a common assumption is that most of the Half-Life games serve as a test for the protagonist, to prepare them for something later. And if he is conducting these tests on such a grand scale, who's to say there aren't any tests within these tests?
Circles within circles.
I mean, G-Man has, on occasion, directly led Gordon to more challenging areas. And have you ever heard of the butterfly effect? How small, seemingly insignificant changes can have massive... This is just a cursed sentence. I'm putting it on the screen for you to read instead. Have you ever noticed how coincidental every part of these games can be? Running into soldiers exactly when they do something important, finding headcrab shells right after they land, catching up with other characters at the perfect moments. What if, whether we know it or not, everything in the Half-Life series is placed there to guide Gordon and lead him to his goal at exactly the right time in every playthrough? I mean, the G-Man's essentially one big metaphor for Valve itself and has been since at least Half-Life 2. It's a built-in narrative reason for scripted scenes and supply crates filled with what the player needs. This battery could be one tiny detail meant to hint toward the great secrets of the game that is still, 20 years later, only barely beginning to unravel before us. Or maybe it's just a weird goddamn battery. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed, let me know in the comments or on my Discord server, link below. You can always hit like and subscribe too if you want to.
In the meantime, this is where I get off.